Welcome to Grounding Ascension, where we explore topics around activating and integrating our I am presence, coming back to our true selves. I am your host, Celeste Glus. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Grounding Ascension. I'm freaking stoked about this episode because it's something that has been wanting to be shared, but at the same time, I've had to sit with it long enough so that I can feel good and comfortable about what information would come through. The dark goddess. Now, a lot of people, when we consider the path of the rose, the path of the goddess, we tend to shun or forget or leave out the darkness. And this is a very important topic to talk about because this podcast is called Grounding Ascension. And if you've heard some of the recent podcast episodes, you'll notice that I keep mentioning that for a reason. And it's to remind you that we are grounding higher levels of light that have never been on this planet before. And that requires the balancing of forces. That requires us to first and foremost accept and embrace the polarity of this dimension. And the polarity, the contrast that we live in the human experience. I mean, human, if you break it down, Hu, H-U, is a resemblance of God. Hu means God in its essence. And man, the body, the physical body of God. So this is a almost oxymoron, right? Unless you have the full understanding of the notion that God lives within. And so if you have that notion, you will be very comfortable with the notion of the dark goddess because you inherently know that we are the vessel for integration and assimilation. We are the vessel that unites the above and the below, the within and the without. We are that star. And that star holds everything. And with it, inherently is the dark goddess. The dark goddess is the void, the cosmic mother, the eternal well of wisdom and knowledge from which all life stems. So when we think about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, there's an aspect of the divine feminine that is the dark mother, the Black Madonna. And this is a concept that has, from my study and my research, has been not only known, but revered from the beginning of time. From ancient cultures, there was this knowing of the dark mother. And that was resembled and represented by the womb, the physical womb of an engendered feminine body. So the portal from which we can access this wisdom, this vast cosmic source of information and knowledge is the womb, the physical portal in the human body. And so the dark goddess represents the vast and infinite potential of all that is. And within that is the darkness. Within that is the actual void. And from that void can stem anything and everything humanly and unhumanly possible that the imagination can take you to. Why do I say that? I say that because part of my spiritual awakening has been to navigate and travel the etheric, the unseen, other realms of consciousness or dimensions, as you can say. And for a very long time, I didn't understand why. I thought it was just very extremely high levels of light that I was traveling through, because that's what I was seeing in my meditations. I was visiting Lemuria. I was swimming in the vastness and the oceans of information. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that part of the integration of the divine feminine and anchoring into the dark mother and the dark goddess is understanding how to navigate the oceans and the depths of encyclopedias that exist in the ethers. She holds that. So even though we can access, for example, the Akashic records or anything that is multidimensional that the human mind cannot necessarily put a finger to, that is held by the web of the dark goddess. And so in that lies the mystery of all mysteries throughout human experience, which includes death, rebirth, sex. And with that can be belief systems, religion, political structures. But ultimately it comes down to the lower chakras. The lower chakras of root, sacral, and solar, which collapse into one as the womb, from what I understand, perceive, and experience in the way that this information is given to me. And so first, to familiarize ourselves and to be okay with talking about these things. The mother and the dark goddess is the holder, the carrier of this knowledge. So if you're listening to this right now, there's a part of you that resonates with the dark goddess. Again, have nothing to do with gender, has nothing to do with what body you inhabit. It has to do with a frequency within your soul. So there's a part of you that is called and guided towards the mysteries of life. And I always think it's funny because when I was first called to this kind of work, the people that were sharing it would call it the mysteries. And it didn't click in my body. Like, why is it a mystery? Why does it have to be even considered a mystery? Why does death, which is the most natural thing that every human being has ever and will ever experience, death, why does it have to be a mystery? I find that to be so funny because it's the most natural thing of life, just like our bleed for women and gendered women. And yet it's a mystery? How can something that is so one with our life be labeled a mystery? And that to me causes almost a sort of rage, because it shouldn't be a mystery. It should be an inherent part of our human experience to talk about, live with, embrace, and look forward to. Yes, look forward to. Because death is just another word for rebirth. I'm not saying I'm like waiting to die, but what I am saying is that this fear around these topics needs to be sat with, and that is the dark goddess. She holds the wisdom to understand that this is just a part of the spectrum of the human experience. And the more we fear it, the more it's actually going to bubble up in our bodies and cause dis-ease, cause the opposite of wellness and ease in our bodies and in our lives. So these frequencies, if we have a fear of death, if we have a fear of our sexual desires and pleasures, if we have a fear of finances, I'm thinking of the lower three energetic centers, right? The way that we feel rooted in life, the way that we express in life, the way that we move about and feel connected to our creativity, to the arousal and the pleasure and the desire principle in our life. These are the things that the dark goddess governs. But here's the thing. The dark goddess exists within every single human being on this planet. There cannot be life without dark. It's like expecting to plant a seed in air and expecting it to grow. You have to plant it in soil, some kind of soil, right? And it's from that darkness that stems life and light. And so the dark mother is the primordial substance of all that is. She holds everything. And without her, we don't have life. without accepting our shadow, without accepting our subconscious, we don't have the full consciousness. We don't have the full light. And the rise of the divine feminine at this time on earth is also the rise of the dark goddess. And what that can look like within you, which I experienced several times, but most recently I experienced, came through as a tremendous amount of rage in my body. Because I realized I had an experience where I was not being accepted for the person that I was in a specific situation. And I was called out and said I was wrong for being the way that I was being. And at first, like any good-hearted quote-unquote person does, I accepted it. And as soon as I walked away, as it usually happens with me, I received clarity after, when I can actually sit in my heart and in my own field and not have any judgments or projections. I sat in silence, and from that silence came the most outrageous and unfathomable, if you can get that word. I recently learned that I have my Mercury in retrograde, so I'm no longer scared of messing up words like that. It's just, I can't do it any other way. Unimaginable amount of rage that was pent up in my body. And this is part of the dark goddess. This is part of the transmutation and the homework that we do as human beings, especially for you if you're listening to this, to alchemize this life experience, to take all of the wounds and projections and belief systems that have held us back for millennia. Oftentimes passed down from our parents, yes, but oftentimes, honestly, just fucking picked up from the matrix that we live in. And this is a lot of the work that we do in the Woman Wisdom Mentorship, and a lot of the work that is done in the Divine I Am course, and just the work that is being created at this time through me. Because the dark goddess needs to be understood for who she is and what she has been. And the reason why there are so many human beings on this planet feeling disconnected and unrooted and unseated in their souls is because they have forgotten their connection to the earth. And the earth is the dark goddess. The earth is the soil and the depths of the darkness of the oceans and the vast space when we look above. So we think of the dark goddess and we get scared, and yet she is the reason why there is life. Without her, there is no potential for existence. Think about the womb and the creation of a child. For that child to be birthed, for the masculine to penetrate and to create, there has to be a container of vast potential that exists. So within every single living essence of this reality, even within matter in itself, the dark goddess exists. And so as she makes herself seen again, this is why we see such an uplifting of frequencies. And as we level up as a humanity and as this new kind of light that's streaming in on this planet, hence the ascended rose frequency that I work with, as we experience all of this, we also need to keep coming back to our lower energy centers, to anchor in. What are we doing if we are not anchoring in to the darkness of ourselves? If we're not taking that light that's coming in and allowing it to penetrate into the deepest parts of our essence. And so when you commune with the dark goddess, when you call in the Black Madonna, when you talk about the cosmic void or the cosmic womb or all that is of the potential of life, you bring forth this essence of integration. And that's what we are doing at this time with so much higher light that's coming in. There are very specific souls that are being called to do this kind of work. And it doesn't have to be scary. Does it create a little uncomfort in the body? Yeah, of course. I mean, we're not necessarily raised to be doing the deep, dark shadow work. We're not necessarily a society who embraces conversations around sex and religion and pleasures and desires and shadows and subconscious and addictions and all these things. But these things need to be sat with and looked at as a human existence. And once they are embraced as that, we can start to sit with them and start to alchemize. And to really understand that the ascension, the light body, the only way that it can be anchored in and held is if it's anchored into the lower energy centers. If we start to integrate the energies of the below and bring them to the above. The light body consists of all of our energy centers and all of the polarity of the human existence. The light body consists of the dark goddess and the light. You cannot have a light body. You cannot have the rising of a Kundalini force in its full essence without having had done the proper work to anchor it in. This is why many people can experience a Kundalini rising. They can experience an activation of the light body, but then they are left ungrounded. If you've ever met someone who feels slightly off, who's kind of like floating in the ethers while they're talking to you, or it's like they're unable to ground certain projects and things they speak about. They're always speaking of this other thing that's about to happen, but they're not actually doing anything. These are just small resemblances and examples of the inability to integrate the dark within, the inability to merge the above and the below. The Christed heart is birthed from the depths of the void. We have to descend in order to ascend, and this is what the dark goddess asks of us. If we are ready to receive the eternal knowledge that has been passed down for millennia, if we think of right now, actually, in order to record this podcast, I was guided to bring out 3 things. A small statue type resemblance. It's actually an incense holder with the Egyptian energy. Most of us know some of the Egyptian background, understanding how they revered the cycle of death and rebirth, how they revered the understanding of the afterworld and how much work they did to prepare for afterlife. And I'm not saying that you have to accept that as your truth, but what I am saying is that the Egyptians were not the only ones who did this. If you look at research, like ancient societies, Egypt came way after. They learned from the civilizations that came before them. There was such a connection and rootedness into the darkness of life. It was a part of life. Something else that I was guided to come out and hold some space with while recording this podcast is the dark stone of Shungite. And I am reminded of the fact that when I first started on this path, quote unquote, I was guided to throw away much of my clothing and just wear a lot of black for a long time. And so, of course, my mental mind flipped out. I was like, oh my God, I'm going into the dark. Oh my God, what is this? This is devilish. This is the hell realms. Oh, this is not good. Why? But a part of me could not get myself to wear colors. It could not get myself to even wear white. And so in spiritual communities, a lot of time, like there's a reason, there's a meaning, and people have a lot of projections around certain things. And so I thought, like, this isn't going anywhere good. But here I am. For some reason, I look at white and I want to throw up. I look at colors and it just disgusts me. I'm like, I just need to be wearing all black. And that's what I did for a long time. And actually, to this day now, I wear a lot of black and white together. And the only reason why I share this is so that you can start to pick up little things in your life. That's the only reason why. to start to take notice, because I only picked this up years after the fact. Like I receive, and then I'm able to look back and put things together. So hopefully this can help, or maybe navigate little things that are happening in your life that you think there's no reason for them. Or maybe like me, you're freaking out about why is this happening? And then later on in the path, you will realize, that was so divine. I wish somebody would have told me that before. So that's the only reason why I share certain experiences, because I hope that it sheds some light to your current intuitive feelings and gut. So the dark goddess was already penetrating my subconscious before I even knew it, because this process is not logical. And so she asks us to look into the parts of our lives that we have chosen to hide from ourselves, because we learned at a very young age that it was not accepted, it was not okay, it was shameful, it was not to be talked about, it was taboo. I could give you a million reasons why we decided it was not okay to have these aspects of us come up. But I will tell you that if you're listening to this, there's an aspect of you that is ready to go in. And maybe that for you right now just means wearing dark clothes or whatever the case may be. But understand that there is an ancient wisdom that is overseeing and overlighting your journey the entire time. And it is those who are willing to anchor into the dark that will see the lightest of the light. There's a certain level of frequency and light that can only be shown to those who are anchored in to their Christed heart, who are anchored in to the depths of their soul. And that requires work. It's not just given. It's not just candy that's given out on Halloween. And you will know if you're called to that path. You will know if you are ready to experience the dark goddess. There's no hiding. And she will birth the highest and the most incredible medicine and gifts through you. First for you to have, and then of course, always your medicine is to be shared with others. Always. It is never just for you. The dark goddess, the mother, always provides. We just don't know how. So I hope that this has shed a little bit of light as to what the dark goddess is. When I refer to her, I hope that it can start to turn people on and light them up instead of turn them off and shut them down. Because this frequency is being anchored and grounded, and is also asked to be looked at this time more than ever before. And especially in the coming years, as we anchor into what we call the new earth, the only way we will be able to do it in a healthy way is if we are okay to do this kind of work, to check in with our subconscious, to get real about what lies deep in our soul. And the last part, to be okay with transformation, full-blown death and rebirth. And that comes so divinely in time to share with you the last piece that decided to come out and to be shared with you at this time is the stone of malachite. The stone of malachite resembles, to me, deep transformation, powerful death and rebirth. And so this process that has been known from the beginning of time, there was this reverence for the mother, the menstrual cycle, the death and rebirth process. All of that is one. It's just in our human existence at this time, we tend to separate those things. We think the menstrual cycle is one thing. We think the seasons of life is another. We think death is another. We think birth is another. We think ego death is another. We think evolution is another. Guys, it's all the same thing. It's the intelligence of the dark goddess. It's the consciousness of the dark mother, of the void, of the eternal essence of knowledge and wisdom. That is the dark goddess. She holds all possibilities. And in that, in every example that I just gave, lies the essence of transformation, lies the essence and the beauty of cycles. And I share this with you to bring together so many dots that in my work for so long, until recently, none of it made sense. I was like, why am I sharing the menstrual cycle? Why am I sharing cyclical living? Why am I sharing deep, dark shadow work? Why? None of this makes sense until I realized, hello, everything that you do brings with it the fabric of the mother, brings with it the fabric of the dark goddess, which requires the transformation and the alchemy of the subconscious. There's so much wisdom to be anchored in through this. And the dark goddess is what brings that forth. So I hope that you start to embrace this path, which I understand it's not for all, but if you've listened to this, especially if you got to the end, it's for you. You're being called. You are so being called to this path. And if it resonates, I do have the Woman Wisdom Mentorship opening, which we get to dive deep and dig into all of these things. And there's so much more that's coming through. But you cannot hide and you cannot run from it. I will tell you that. Because I tried that. It didn't work, guys. If it's in your soul path, you cannot hide from your essence. And let me tell you that when you turn towards it, as much courage and faith it requires, you'll actually question why you took so long to turn towards it. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's just going to be given to you. What I'm saying is that it's going to be so worthwhile to come back to your truth. No one has it for you. There's no mentor, there's no course, there's no nothing that will ever give you your truth. But the dark goddess, she will give it to you. And the only way to claim it is to go within. And the only way to have access to your truth is to have the courage and the willingness to ask and to dive in. And life will give you people, they'll give you synchronicities, it'll give you the things that you need, the people that you need, the circumstances, the situations, but you have to show up for it and you have to say yes. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I have shed some light on the dark and I've anchored in some of these things that are being talked about that sometimes feel so untouchable and out there. I hope I've grounded and made it a little bit more practical for you. And if you are called to be guided into the deeper wisdom of your body, the darkness and the void that can anchor in the light body and the grounding of your ascension process and the work that is being called to be done at this time, if that is you, then I invite you to check out the Woman Wisdom Mentorship. I invite you to check out the link below with the webinar about the connection between our desires and the divine feminine. I invite you to explore. Let your intuition guide you. And I trust that the dark goddess is holding you, overlighting and overseeing your entire journey. All right, my friends, until next time, I hope to hear from you. Let me know how this is all sitting with you, if it resonates, and if you'd like to hear more. Sending you so much love. Mwah.